Distinguished Mr. President, Your Excellencies, esteemed delegates, I am standing here for the first time as President of the Republic of Poland. And of course, I feel great proud because of this. But at the same time, I'm aware of what serious challenges we are facing today as an international community. This is indeed so, for the world has changed completely over the last couple of years since the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On February the 24th, 2022, we were brutally, all of us, awakened from our blissful dream of a world at the end of history. The history did not finish, and the history will not finish, and we need to be aware of that. So we were awakened from our blissful dream in which we strive for universal peace and respect for the principles of international law. I believe these are the words which are repeated more frequently in this community. This dream, ladies and gentlemen, does no longer exist, and we often repeat the words which do not reflect reality which surrounds us, both in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe, and in many other regions of the world from which you have come. State borders have ceased to be untouchable, as a matter of fact, and international law, which has so far been considered the compass of the world order, began to be treated more as a suggestion rather than a rule. Let me remind you that shortly after the outbreak of the war and the attack of the Russian Federation on Ukraine, Polish men and women demonstrated incredible solidarity with the fighting Ukrainian nation. We opened our hearts, our borders, we opened up our homes. We provided material, financial, and military assistance, as well as diplomatic one. Today, ladies and gentlemen, 1 million Ukrainian refugees live in Poland. Ladies and gentlemen, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is not only the most serious conflict in Europe since World War II, but it is also a turning point. The existing international order is crumbling before our eyes. The world has entered a new and dangerous era of rivalry between great powers, breaking rules and testing how far one can go before someone says a clear enough stop. The principle of sovereignty, you can ask this question. It is increasingly trampled upon, the prohibition of aggression reduced to a dead letter. Instead of law, an attempt to use naked and brutal force. We are at a turning point in history, a time when the decisions made today will have consequences for decades to come. And all of us need to be aware of this, and all of us are taking responsibility for this. That is why now, as a community of democratic states, or those aspiring to be democratic states, we must view the current situation as a battlefield for principles whose observance may determine the future of our civilization. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is the last moment to take concrete action. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia's aggression against Ukraine is not just a regional conflict. It is a test of whether the principles on which the UN is based will stand the test of time, or whether they will succumb to the weight of the imperial and colonial ambitions of a state which considers itself above the law and which has repeatedly ignored the resolutions of the assembly, of this assembly, of other assemblies, and to a certain extent, all of us take responsibility for that. Further, repeating the words about peace and security, which have to be spoken out loud, but which should be followed by concrete action. Moscow